Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week I am covering the story of the building of the Masonic Hall in Wallsend. Obviously this is not a full history of the building, just details of when it was first built. I hope you will enjoy it and find it interesting. In November of 1890 the plans were passed by the Wallsend local board to build a new Masonic Hall. The location for the building was a patch of currently empty land on Station Road, which was close to the railway station and St Luke's Church. The whole of the top floor of the building would be devoted to the members of the Masonic Hall. Part of the ground floor had been leased by the bankers Hodgkin, Barnett, Pease and Company, who had previously opened a bank on the High Street, and the entrance for this would be on the Station Road side. The remaining part of the ground floor had been leased to the Wallsend local board to use for their meetings. Now this of course was at a time before the town hall was even thought of, let alone built, and it was also before the local board grew in numbers and needed a much larger building for their own use. It was hoped that the building would be completed within 6 months. However, this would not be the case, as the building work took a little longer than expected, which was often the case. The cost for the building of the Masonic Hall was estimated to be around £2,000, which in today's money would be around £322,000, so it was quite a high cost to build at the time. The architect was Mr. Hope of North Shields, and the builder was Mr. W.T. Weir of Howden. By April of 1891 the building was halfway to being completed, and a ceremony was then held to lay the foundation stone. Now I'm sure that most of you will know that generally the foundation stones of the buildings of Wallsend would be on ground level. However, the foundation stone for the Masonic Hall was placed halfway up the front of the building. If you look at the photo on screen at the moment, you can see that the stone is very much in place on what would be the second floor of the building. Now it does make me wonder what exactly those who performed the ceremony were standing on. Hopefully some kind of platform had been built for them and they didn't have to clamber up the side of the building on some rickety old ladder. The ceremony to lay the foundation stone was quite an elaborate one. The Masonic Hall had been built for the Tyne Lodge number 991, and I believe that these had previously been based at Willington Quay, and many of their members were present for the ceremony along with Sir Matthew White Ridley, who was the man who would be laying the foundation stone. Sir Matthew White Ridley was not just a Mason, but he was also an MP, and he was at one time the Speaker at the House of Commons in London and the Home Secretary until his retirement in 1900. The ceremony began with a procession of members from the Wallsend Cafe, which, as most of you will know from one of my earlier videos, once stood on the corner of Station Road and the High Street, and the building, as you can see in this photo, is still there today. The procession was quite a short one, as the men only had to walk a few yards down the road to reach the Masonic Hall. The ceremony itself was quite well covered in the papers at the time, and I thought that I would include the actual speech given by Sir Matthew White Ridley, and he said the following: "Men and brethren here assembled to behold this ceremony, be it known unto you that we be the lawful Masons, true and faithful to the laws of our country, and engaged by solemn obligations to erect handsome buildings to be serviceable to the brethren, and to fear God, the great architect of the universe. We have among us concealed from the eyes of all men secrets which may not be revealed, and which no man has discovered. But these secrets are lawful and honourable, and not repugnant to the laws of God or man. They were entrusted in peace and honour to the Masons of ancient times, and have been faithfully transmitted to us. It is our duty to convey them unimpaired to the latest posterity. Unless our craft were good and our calling honourable, we should not have lasted for so many centuries, nor should we have had so many illustrious brothers in our order, ready to promote our laws and further our interests. We are assembled here today in the presence of you all to erect this building to the honour and glory of the Most High, which we pray God may prosper as it seems good to him, and, as the first duty of masons in any undertaking is to invoke the blessings of the great architect of the universe on their work, I call upon you to unite with our Grand Chaplain in an address to the throne of grace. It was at this point that a prayer was said by the Reverend T.B. Nichols. After this, the cornerstone was laid. The inscription was read out to all who were present. And I won't do this, as you can see from the photo on screen at the moment, it is very clear and easy to read, even after all these years, although it has obviously been taken care of to keep it this way. And just before the stone was laid, the Grand Master had asked Brother Grand Treasurer to deposit some items into the cavity of the foundation stone. These items, added by Mr. George Allen, who lived on Wallsend Green and was the Grand Treasurer of the Lodge, were some current coins of the time, 3 copies of Newcastle newspapers, and a history of the Tyne Lodge 991. Now, I have to say here that I did not know anything about this previously, and I found it quite fascinating, and I assume that there is a clear record of these items being placed inside the stone, so that if at any time the building was demolished, they would know to look for them. And it kind of makes me wish that this had been done with other buildings in the past that have been demolished, as they would have been a lovely insight into the past. After this, Sir Matthew was given a silver trowel as a memento of the occasion, and even this fascinated me, as it was said that the handle of the trowel had been made using oak from one of the old-time bridges. Now, I really do wonder what happened to that, and if it still exists, it would be really interesting to see that. And for anyone wondering, some of the older bridges over the Tyne had been made with wood, and some had been part wood and part stone. And of course, our current Tyne Bridge was not built until, I believe, 1928, so the wood was from one of the much earlier bridges, but which one was not actually mentioned. The ceremony was still not quite over, as after the foundation stone had been laid, a few more rituals were still to take place. The Grand Master, after stating that the stone was true and square, and that the craftsman had worked well, then struck the stone 3 times. He scattered some corn onto it and said, "I scatter corn on this cone as the emblem of plenty and abundance. May the blessings of morality and virtue flourish within this building, producing fruit 100-fold. He then poured wine on the stone, symbolizing joy and gladness, and then oil as a symbol of peace. After this, the ceremony ended with a further prayer, and then the Grand Master spoke to the architect and the builder, stating that the plans were now entrusted to them to complete the work on the building without any loss of time. The masons, after some of them had stood for photographs, then headed back to the Wallsend Cafe where a banquet was to be held. And I do have to wonder what happened to the photos that were taken on the day of the laying of the foundation stone. I have seen one photo which was thought to be taken on the day, but sadly this is not one that can be shared in this video. The Masonic Hall itself was described as being built in red brick with stone dressing, and that it was a very impressive building. The Masonic area on the upper floor would contain a lodge room which was 39 foot by 26 foot and 21 feet high, and also refreshment rooms and ante-rooms. The Wallsend local board would also have a large boardroom and also separate smaller rooms for the rate collector, sanitary inspector and the surveyor, and would be used by the board and the council right up until the town hall was built in 1908. Although the Masonic Hall would not be officially opened until December of 1891, the Wallsend local board would meet in their boardroom for the first time in November of 1891. It was a relatively short meeting where it seems the main topic of conversation was the desire to have a public clock put up somewhere in the area, and it seems that this was to be put up in the railway station. After this, their meeting was brought to a close, and the members of the board then went upstairs to the Masonic Lodge, where they no doubt had tea. Also moving into the building before the official opening was the bank, which moved in around the 20th of November. And if you look at this photo on screen at the moment, you will see that you can still clearly see the sign for the bank above the entrance door of the Station Road entrance. Now this obviously is a cropped photo, so you can only see the top of the door where you can clearly see the word bank. As said a little earlier, the Masonic Hall was officially opened in early December of 1891. Now oddly, there was very little detail in the papers at the time about this, and the most information that I could find simply stated that it was opened and that Brother George Blair presented the lodge with a beautiful new organ to show his interest in the new building. It was said that a vast number of members, past and present, were present for the official opening, and that was basically all I was able to find. As said earlier, this story is just about the building and the opening of the Masonic Hall, so I don't plan to try and cover its history over the years, because obviously that would be quite detailed and quite a long video, and probably most people would find it a little bit boring. But I will end by saying that the whole of the building is still in use today. The ground floor is no longer a bank, as it has not been a bank for many years. The upper floor is still used as a Masonic Hall. And as I don't often get to say this, it is thankfully one of our older buildings, which is still standing over 130 years after it was first opened. I do hope that you have enjoyed this short little story and that you have found it interesting. I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.